Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer, where we are still unpacking the onboarding process once we get hired by a client. So we get a lot of questions with this whenever we meet with financial advisors, at industry conferences, or if they jump on one of our incredible quarterly power sessions. They have follow-up questions about like, okay, great, now I've implemented Surge, but what do I do during that first year I've gotten hired by a client in order to deliver massive value to them and reinforce that relationship? And I mentioned Surge because Surge is really important to understand exactly how this works in our offices. So I'm going to be speaking about Shalansky and Associates. We run an enterprise office. There are 14 of us, I believe, on staff, of which 5 of us are financial advisors. We work with clients across the United States. Around 46% of our clientele works in the lower 48. And of course, our office, our RIA, is based out of Anchorage, Alaska. We've been in business since around 1981 when our father, Floyd Shalansky, and mom, Rosa Shalansky, started the financial planning practice up here in this very remote part of the world. And during that time, began with Floyd and Rosa seeing clients pretty much any time the client was willing and able to meet with them. It didn't matter if it was 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night after hockey practice or early Saturday morning at the remote cabin where the client lived. They were just eager to get business started. And of course, in those early stages, anyone that says yes to you feels like your ideal client. But over the years, we began to refine our processes over and over and over again, because what we found, because of our mom, Rosa Shalansky, reiterating to our dad, Floyd, was that the clients that asked you for exceptions, asked you to come to their house late at night, asked you to come to their place of residence on the weekend because they simply couldn't make time to meet with you during the day, were not ideal clients. Those were people that were always going to be looking for and asking you for exceptions. Those were people that wanted you to cater around their lifestyle, but had no consideration for your own. So it took several years, and my father went to several coaching programs and learned about strategic days, buffer days, and how to make those work in our practice. Now, as he began to refine what worked best for him, he found that during longer periods of time where he was incredibly focused, served him better than having maybe one day on, one day off, and then a buffer day. So as he began to sculpt and work with this, my brother, Micah Shalansky, came into the practice. His daughter, Aviana, had some severe medical challenges, and we were forced to make a very dramatic change on how our practice worked with clients. And that implemented what we now refer to in the industry as Surge, with these specific time-blocked periods of time in which you are deeply focused on interacting with clients and making sure that you're working with them one-on-one. But outside of Surge, and at Shalansky and Associates, we have 3 surges a year. So we have our spring surge that happens from mid-March to mid-April. We have our summer surges, which are kind of sprinkled in on different days, generally the first week of the month. And then we also have our fall surge. And our fall surge happens about mid-October to right before Thanksgiving time. Now, those are deliberate and specific choices on the calendar in which we have chosen those dates and times to meet with clients. If you are looking or thinking about implementing Surge or refining Surge in your office because you already started it, rip off our dates. Use our calendar. It works really, really well, specifically for a reason that we've talked a lot about on this podcast. So again, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Work with these dates. They have been refined over decades of times to make sure that they're bringing the most value to clients and the most effectiveness for you running your RIA, your financial advisory practice. So now that we know what our surge dates are, begs the question, what do you do with new clients? We've been talking about that all the month, about how do we deliver massive value when we onboard a new client. A lot of times people think that prospecting is the hardest task. You know, the funnest part of financial planning is meeting with a prospect for the very first time, diving into their information, blowing their mind with tremendous value. But that second appointment, That second appointment is when you better hit a home run. You can't be on B game. Now that you've been hired, what are you going to do for the rest of the year to deliver massive value? And I find that those second and third appointments are pretty easy, right? Because you're still doing a lot of work and you're doing all of that fun stuff of consolidating all of their information, getting everything together, developing the financial plan. But then you've got to be able to put yourself in a position for ongoing continued value. So what happens when we get hired by a client at the beginning of search, perhaps, and then it could be 2-3 months before they're available to meet with our office again? How do we set those expectations with the client, and how do we make sure that we're continuing to deliver massive value? So as you recall, for Shalansky & Associates, we focus a lot on federal employees. So we run Plan Your Federal Retirement, which my brother Mike is the face of, and I'm the author behind the articles. And we spend a lot of time and energy marketing financial advisory services to federal employees. So when a federal employee contacts Shalansky & Associates in order to book their appointment with one of our federal employee benefits experts, remember we have 5 financial advisors in our office, but we all operate the exact same surge schedule. We set out our surge schedule over a year in advance. This is not open for decision making by an entire committee. Instead, it's established by our leadership team, and those are the dates that we all roll with, generally without exception. So right from the beginning, federal employees are going to know that it could take several weeks, if not months, to get into our office. We have set a standard that says, hey, just because you call and you want to work with us and you want to retire next month, we either have an opening or we do not. We generally do not make emergency appointments. Are there some exceptions? Of course there are exceptions. But if we're going to break our processes, it has to be a really good reason why. Here's a great reason why. You've got a long-term client and their brother, sister has a spouse that passes away, and my goodness, the whole world's crashing down and they need to meet with a financial advisor right away. Those would be emergency situations. But again, look at the history of you working with people. You don't have that many emergencies. You might have some man-made emergencies, but you don't have real emergencies happening so often that you don't know how to accommodate or make time for. So we try to be really disciplined in our process, and our prospects know that when they want to come and meet with us, it's already been several weeks or months before they are able to make an appointment with one of our financial advisors. So we set that expectation right from the get-go. When we set up our surge schedule, one of the things that a lot of rookies implementing surge make a mistake of is they forget to give themselves any buffer days. So a buffer day is 1 to 2 days at the end of surge in which you've allowed yourself additional time to meet with appointments. And the reason that we have these buffer days is because sometimes when we meet with financial planning clients during surge, something might be going on dramatic in their life that we need a second appointment with them during that specific time period. Or if we're onboarding a prospect, we may at the beginning of surge meet with a prospect and they decide to hire us. We decide they're a good fit for our firm. Remember, because this is a mutual relationship, it has to feel good both ways. Just because a person can fog a mirror does not make them an ideal client. Listen to your gut, listen to your instincts. I cannot drive this home enough. I've never once graduated or fired a client where I didn't look back and have red flags, meaning that they should have never been a client from the get-go. So they've agreed to hire us and now they want that second appointment. We've got a little bit of buffer time to have a second consultation during a surge if we need to. And if we don't need to, we outline all of the homework that we want to get done in between now and our next meeting, as well as what we have anticipated the client getting done between now and our next meeting. Just like our podcast, where we pack this full of action items for you to do, that's what our meetings with clients are like also. In fact, when I'm coming to the conclusion of a meeting with a client, I will say, great, just before we leave one another, I want to make sure I go through our list. Here's what I'm going to do between now and the next time that we meet. And then here's the action items that I have for you to do. And just because I'm really deadline driven, I believe in Parkinson's law, that the work will take up the time in which you allow for it to do, then let's make sure we attach some really good deadlines on this. When do you think, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you can have X done by? Great. Would it be appropriate for me to have one of our relationship managers reach out to you if we get close to that deadline and it's not done? Now, I really like doing this with clients. I like setting deadlines and targets on getting certain things accomplished. One of the driving reasons is because we do what we say we're going to do. And financial planning is a verb. It is an ongoing experience, and that means that we want to get certain things tackled and done on time. Now, when I bring on a new prospect and they hire us for financial planning, I'm not going to barrage them with action items that they need to complete. Instead, I want small, digestible milestones that they can realistically achieve in the time that we have allotted. Now, if you think I talk fast, I probably even think faster. And so oftentimes my deadlines are a lot shorter than what people have a tolerance or, God forbid, other things in their lives going on to be able to accomplish. So I want to make sure that whenever I give a deadline, I know one hack that I will mentally do is that I will ask the client, listen, I think this should take about 5 days, but I understand that you have more things going on in your life, Mr. and Mrs. Client, than what I have on my agenda here today. Shall we allow 2 weeks for this? And then I'll get their acquiesce to that yes or no, and then we'll go from there. After that 2 weeks, if I have not heard from them, if the client has not got that task done, I'm going to have my relationship managers or my operations team reach out to them. The difference between when I have a relationship manager and when I have an ops team reach out depends on what I need or wanted the client to do. Is it involving the movement of money? Then I'm going to have my ops team. That is their sole focus, is the movement and management of money. Anything else pretty much goes in the RM category. If I need them to get me a copy of their declaration pages for insurance, if I need them to get me their employee benefit information, their asset allocation forms for their company's employer plan, if anything like that, I'm going to task that over to an RM. Now remember that the relationship manager and operation personnel in our office cannot give financial planning advice, right? That's a deal breaker. Regardless of their license, if they're not a financial advisor, they cannot give financial planning advice at our firm. However, they don't have to give advice to help a client figure out where to get different forms from their employer. They don't have to be licensed to follow up on pay stubs and leaving earning statements and make those courtesy phone calls for clients, or work with their centers of influence, right? Follow up on taxes, follow up on estate planning documents, make sure we have deeds of trust on file, all of that information that goes into me building the financial plan. And if you're anything like me, the second that you get hired from a client and you start going through and putting your arms wrapped around all this financial information, you're so excited to get started on all the planning. And you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, I need to get all of this done. This is what I've got to build out. This is the scope of what it looks like. But when your client leaves your office, while these things are really important and vital for them to get done, it's not the only thing going on in their lives, right? They have other things that are a priority too. So making sure that you're giving them small, digestible tasks to achieve. One of the ways that we set this expectation in our office, and I've got a great visual of it if you want to jump over to Shilansky.com. That's SHILANSKI.com. And you will see that I have a little animated roadmap of where we're going when we build financial plans with clients. And the way that we verbalize this with clients is we say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, when we build your financial plan, it's going to be often like building your financial house. So if you'll walk me through this, what's the most important thing for you to make sure that you have started your new home on when you start to build it? And of course, Mr. and Mrs. Client will say, well, it's got to have a good foundation. And we will agree. We'll say, yes, good houses start with good foundations, just like in financial planning. And so the most important part of your financial plan for us to get done right away is going to be your estate planning, because without it, none of what we build together matters. Would we agree with that? Yes, absolutely. Great. I also like to tackle estate planning first because it is the one you're going to want to put off the most. Can we both agree on that? And they'll get a little chuckle, because oftentimes two people in a relationship, in a household, raising families, having diversity from their different backgrounds, do not have coinciding views on what should happen with their estate if one of them predeceases the other, or if they were both to perish. So I say, you know what? This is a terrible topic for us to have to discuss. Let's get it done first so that we know it's checkmarked. And then here's where we're going to go every year after that. Every couple of years, we're just going to kind of do a cursory review, make sure it's still intact and is as you want it to be. Does that sound like a good commitment? Yes, absolutely. Great. Well, then during our next meeting, we're going to be discussing your estate planning. There are 4 areas of estate planning that are really vital to me. 3 of them I know without a doubt you need. The 4th one, you might need, you might not need, but I want to explore it together with you and make sure that we have everything in our financial plan built around your desires and wishes today as they are. Oh, that sounds great, Jamie. Fantastic. And we're going to coordinate that with an attorney. If you don't currently work with one, I'll make a recommendation. I'll go above making a recommendation. Why don't we have that first consultation here in our office where we're all comfortable, and I can preface them with some things that on the tax planning side of the scenario they need to know about, and then we can just have an introduction together. Oh, Jamie, that's great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Boom, I set my expectation for that first estate planning meeting. Now, during that time period between there and estate planning, I'm also going to hit through cash flow, right? Cash is king, regardless of where you're at in your career or how close you are to retirement, or if you're in retirement, cash is king. So if you remember from other conversations that I've had with you, I never use the word budget, or as Matthew Jarvis likes to say, budget. Instead, I use a spending plan. What are our goals? What are our objectives? Money is intentional, and I want you to be intentional about what you're earning and what you're spending. And I want to give your money some purpose. So if there are things that you love to do, I want to incorporate them now, today, in your financial plan. Mr. and Mrs. Client, I have grown up in the financial planning industry, and it breaks my heart to know that some people scrimp and save their entire working lives, and then 2 weeks after they retire, and I don't want that for you. I don't want all of your happiness to be postponed until you're into the go-go years of your retirement. So I would love to design a financial plan that is really suitable for your lifestyle. And Mr. and Mrs. Client, you might not be anything like me, but if you are, I sometimes think of money like food. And I could be working out and I could be feeling really, really good, hitting the gym all the time, not having any fried foods or sugar, low limits on my carbs. And I'm feeling so healthy and so good that 30 days into this, I get invited to a party and somebody says, oh, come on, live a little, have a little pizza, have a little beer. And then a little pizza turns into a lot of pizza and a lot of beer if you're Jamie Shalansky. So then the next day, do I want to get up and go to the gym? No, because I'm hungover from pizza and beer, and now I feel lousy about myself. And so then it may take a little bit of time to reinitiate those habits about being disciplined about money. And I think money is a lot like food in that way, that sometimes we scrimp and we save and we're doing so good that all of a sudden we want to reward ourselves. And we're like, yes, absolutely. So it is imperative to me that as we build out your financial plan, we're being intentional and we're creating a spending plan that is designed so beautifully that you are so happy later in life to look back on it because you knew you were intentional, you were purposeful, you took care of the things that you needed to, but you also lived your life. And generally we'll come up with a great spending plan. I'm a great fan of buckets, not our investment buckets, but our cash flow buckets. And we'll talk a little bit about that later in future episodes. But those cash flow buckets are phenomenal. They're so powerful. I've never implemented one where a client has come back to me and said, this is the worst idea ever. This is like one of these low IQ, huge impact ideas that clients come back and say, wow, I wish I would have started out my life doing this. Thank you so much. And they go on to tell their friends about it. In fact, I've been hired because I've dealt with medical professionals that came in my office and said, hey, listen, I know you've got so-and-so set up like this. I want to be set up like that. How do I do it too? So really, really powerful stuff. So as we discuss all about cash flow, that's going to happen in between kind of our first and second meeting. And cash flow is going to be one of those conversations that we're always talking about, right? This is like when you go to the doctor and they get the vitals. We're always going to be talking about cash flow in every single meeting because cash flow is king and we've got to know what those ebbs and flows are for clients. All right, then we're going to talk about retirement income. What do we need to do? Insurance, right? And I explained to the client that now we're going to frame the house. We got to frame everything up. And the fun part is doing the dressing and doing the design and the pictures and making sure that we bring in furniture. But first, we got to have a solid foundation. Then we got to frame the house. Then we'll bring in the flooring and make sure we get everything intact. So as we set the tone for that, we're going to talk to them about different things in the meetings that we need to achieve over the next couple of years. And we'll go through goals and tax planning, investment, and then depending on who the client is and what they need, maybe that's some small business planning as well. Small business can mean a mom and pop shop, a hobby that becomes something profitable. It also can mean real estate income and how we're going to make sure that we're diversifying different income sources for passive income later in their life. So we'll do all of these in several different appointments, and we're setting that tone about that financial house and building it. Every single appointment that we meet for the first couple of years, I'm going to reinforce that metaphor, right? Mr. and Mrs. Client, as you know, we said we would build your financial house. Here's what we've accomplished. We set out a really great foundation. We got X, Y, and Z done, and we did it on time. Oh man, that's great, Jamie. We've been thinking about doing that for years. It's been on our mental to-do list. We've just never gotten it done. I'm so happy that's done and out of the way now. Great. Now we built out your spending plan. Here's what we're doing to live intentionally and creating these different cash flow buckets. Oh, this is phenomenal. Yep, we're able to do this. And now we're not panicked about where money's going to come from, if we have an emergency or if we want to go on vacation, etc. And then we start talking about the insurance. Okay, great. Insurance is something that we'll do a pulse point on. But once it's kind of a one and done, right? Like you're buying your insurance policy. A lot of times that's life insurance. And sometimes it's health, sometimes it's disability and other risk management areas. But a lot of times with life insurance, we're just making sure we have it in place. And then we're doing a sort of low routine maintenance on it. But that's still a conversation point. Just because we sold one insurance policy 1 year, we're not going to wait to talk to it 15 years later because we sold them a 20-year term. That's something that we're going to constantly bring our value adds around and make sure they've got other things checkmarked. We do not do property and casualty insurance inside of our office, and we don't really have a great relationship with somebody that does property and casualty. Rather, that onerous is on the client, and then we want to see those declaration pages because we just want to mentally check mark it and make sure that we have it inside of that financial planning house. So as you can see, we're doing a lot of work in between these appointments, but not a lot of that work necessarily is going to mean that I'm talking to the client during each one of those stages. In fact, I'm going to rely heavily on my team to make several points of contact. Now, when we first implemented Surge in this super hyper disciplined way, the first couple of years, us financial advisors got a little bit of tremors. We're like, oh my gosh, we have not talked to that client in X amount of days. We're probably going to lose clients, and it always leads back to what's the joke? Yep, you got it. We're going to lose all our clients, be broke, and living in a van down by the river. And so it really made me stop one day and say, okay, hold on a second. I've got a lot of head trash about me not communicating or talking as much to clients as I had in years before. I'm going to pull up our Infinity CRM and I'm going to see on my widget dashboard. So when I log into my CRM, it is exactly all the different pulse points that I want. So I track new clients, I track lost clients, and lost in our office means either we graduated, they've gone on to do something else, or they've passed away. Then we, of course, have our AUM pulse points. We have the number of clients. And then I also track how many incoming phone calls that we have. So we use Ring Central because we have multiple people living in different states from work from home positions. And then during Surge, we all travel back to Alaska and we're all in person, at least for the first couple of weeks for our remote team here. So when I get that kind of head trash in my brain and thinking that we haven't heard from clients and that nobody's calling our office anymore, I simply log into my system and I see an Infinity that Mr. and Mrs. Client go into their client record. I see all in the notes. Our CRM is the brain trust of our practice. All employees use the CRM, and if we have any interaction whatsoever with a client, it goes inside of Infinity. If we send them an email, if we log a phone call, if we have a missed phone call from a client, everything goes inside Infinity, including all of our value adds. And this has been super powerful because we'll have clients call back after, let's just say that we're in mid-October, we ran our beneficiary report. We're showing clients who's going to receive all of the assets in dollar amounts and percentages. And maybe that client calls back in January and says, hey, we went over all my beneficiaries. I can't find that form anymore. I wanted to review something. Could I talk to Jamie? My relationship manager is going to jump in there and say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, absolutely. I'd be happy to schedule you time on Jamie's calendar. But I also see that I have a copy of this report here. Do you still need to talk to Jamie, or should I just upload this to your Box.com account? Oh, actually, you know what? Just upload it. And then after I review it, if I have additional questions, I'll call you and we'll get time on the calendar. Boom. Great. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Want to make sure you're being taken care of. And so we'll have multiple points of contact, but to be honest, they don't always need to contact me directly. I'm involved when it becomes financial planning advice, when the client needs advice, when the client needs maintenance or account updates or logistical things to happen. That's not going to happen with me anyway. That's going to happen with somebody on my team, whether it's my ops team or my relationship manager. Am I capable of doing those things? Absolutely. Will I get them accurate and done right the first time and quick? Probably not, because that's not what I do all day long. I empower and trust a team that are experts in what they do and are efficient in getting it done. So I've removed my ego, surrounded myself with people that I'm not just happy to employ, but people that I respect and I trust to deliver the highest caliber of client services. And guess what? They do. They show up. We don't have B-level team members. We only have A-level team members. And when you employ only A-level people, they want to be around other A-level people. They're competitive in the best ways. They're team-oriented because they want everyone to succeed. And if they find somebody that's a coworker slacking off or not getting stuff done, they're not going to go tattletale to me. They're going to bring it up directly to that coworker and say, hey, what's going on? I see that this wasn't completed. How can I help you with this? We have employee scorecards where everyone can see the ebb and flows of their tasks to make sure that nobody's falling behind. And if somebody is falling behind, because that can happen, then we have the culture and team and environment where somebody better jump in and say, hey, I see you need help. Tag me in. Let's get this done together. What does it take to get us both out of here by Friday afternoon? I do not employ people that say, well, that's not my job, that's theirs. And that is a Rosa Shalansky playbook rule. Saying the words, that's not my job, will get you fired, period. Because that's not our mentality. That's not our culture. That's not our environment. That attitude does not work for our company, period. End of sentence. No longer employed. See you later. Bye. Thank you for your time. And just because I only get involved with clients during the financial planning advice doesn't mean I'm not involved with my team, right? And so we could be in between surges. Every year I try to do a really intentional, powerful Christmas gift that is sentimental to clients. And that's a lot of effort to get out for 500 different households. So if I wrap up Surge, which by the way, my team is also in Surge, and those Christmas gifts have to get out, guess what? I'm going to have my nieces and nephew and son in tow, and I'm going to join them in our rec room, and we're all going to pound it out together. I don't say, well, sorry, so-and-so, you just have to get it done, and it's your sole responsibility. Leaders show up for their team when their team needs them the most. So as you can see, even though our surges are only during 3 periods of the calendar year, our clients are going to get multiple contacts with our office. It just might not always be with that financial advisor, but could be with that financial advisor. And those mini surges are a great time for not only for those regular accountants and meeting with clients, but also those one-off things that come up and need to get on the calendar and scheduled for. And the importance behind those mini surges is also telling our team that they have a placeholder. They have a place that if a financial advisor needs to jump on the phone and get back to a client about something, that they absolutely can. Because while most of our clients, in fact, gosh, we have 500 households, and I think we have 2 clients come to mind that just they really don't want to talk to the team. They want to talk to their financial advisor. That is just their personality. But we also set a standard that while they might like to only talk to their financial advisor, the rest of the team is involved. And if you don't want the rest of the team involved, no problem, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Completely understand. You're just not best suited for our office. We all work harmoniously together. And if that's a deal breaker for you, I want to honor and respect that. And I'd love to make a recommendation of another financial advisor who just might be more appropriate for you than I am. It is okay to set standards with clients and tell them who they are going to be communicating with and who gets them the answer to their questions that they have the most. And all roads don't have to lead back to you. In fact, somebody in your office just might be a lot better suited to answer most of the client questions than you are, as long as they're not revolving around financial planning advice, of course. So, action items for onboarding new clients and how to set standards that first year. Again, remember that you got to set good expectations. Whatever you start in the beginning is going to be what lasts until the very end. And this happens in all ways, right? If you drop everything and make a Wednesday 7 p.m. appointment, guess what that client is always going to expect you to do? You're always going to have to drop everything and accommodate their schedule. If you're driving to their house on Saturday and Sundays, guess what that client is always going to want you to do? This works with all relationships ever, right? That this is with friends, this is with neighbors, this is with colleagues, this is with clients. What you start in the beginning is going to last until the end. And remember, boundaries are healthy. They don't just keep people out, they keep you in your absolute best. And if you are constantly making exceptions and you are constantly breaking the process, you are not going to be at the best. And also your team is not going to rely on you. So whether you have 1 people, you cannot expect your team to follow all of the processes and steps that you have laid out if you are so casually willing to break them yourself. Why would a team member want to do that? And this is rule number 1 in life. life. Do what you say you are going to do. And so if you have a policy and process in place, you have to set that expectation. You have to follow that policy and process. No, I'm not speaking to emergencies. Emergencies are emergencies for a reason. That means they are infrequent and they are not common. You might think that there are emergencies, but there really aren't that many emergencies that we have to go through in life. That is why they are so dramatic when they do happen. That's why they're so significant. That's when clients do get the 7 p.m. or Saturday phone call, is because they are not something that is regularly happening in your life or theirs. You have to lay out what your financial planning process is for that client. They've got to know where they're headed towards, right? And so this is like them being adrift on the sea, and you're coming in and you're plotting a course and navigating them to the destination that they want. They will be compassionate towards how long it takes if they understand that they are achieving things throughout time. I use the metaphor of a financial planning house. I walked you through how we set expectations for solid foundation, framing, and then doing all the dressings. Use that metaphor, rip it off, talk to clients about it, and make sure that they understand that in this experience, in this engaging you to be their financial advisor, that financial planning is a verb. You're going to do a lot of things, and a lot of them are going to happen at the beginning of your relationship, but then it is not just put it in neutral and coast throughout. Instead, you're going to be continually delivering massive value because you're going to be reinforcing. So if we take that example that I gave you about setting that financial foundation, and that's the estate planning, in 2 or 3 years when we do an estate planning review, I'm going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, when we first started working together, you might recall that I called this building your financial house. And we both agreed that in order for any house to withstand the weather and course of time, it had to have a solid foundation. Oh yeah, Jamie, I do remember that. Great. We called that your estate planning. We wanted to make sure we had all your affairs in order and things are documented as they should be. Today, because life has changed over the last couple of years, I want to take a few moments and I want to make sure we're reviewing all of our beneficiary designations and the title of how we have all of the accounts. I've also done a cursory review of all 4, if they have 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4, estate planning documents. And I want to make sure that these are still your best interest right now, and this is as you want everything to be set up. Mr. and Mrs. Client, you will remember that when it comes to estate planning, you can make unlimited amount of changes to your estate plan as long as you are alive to do them. And we'll get a good chuckle out of that. And so it will remind them that just because we started a flurry of activity when they first started doesn't mean we're going to get lackadaisical in the planning as the years go by. And we do review a lot of last will and testament and trust several years down the road, because a lot of times people are going to want to update the role that other people play inside of their estate plan based on that person's current life situation, current physical or mental status, as well as their financial maturity as the years go on. And that is why we deliver those value adds every single quarter, and we recycle some of them every few years, because those things can update and change and they're just as important. And I want that financial planning client to know that what we started in the beginning is going to be true until the end. And because I said this was so important for us to check, then build upon that foundation, it is just as important for me every few years to go back and make sure it is accurate and solid. And when I bring on a new client, I'm also going to get out of my own head trash and thinking that we're not talking or communicating with clients. And I'm going to go verify first, right? I'm not going to be banging down every door of every single one of my team members' offices to say, when have we talked to this client? What happened? Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to bring up Infinity. I'm going to look into our CRM. I'm going to see our points of contact. I'm going to see how many phone calls were made, inbound, outbound, all the emails. And I'm going to put that worry to rest, because I know just because I'm only talking to the client every couple of months doesn't mean my team isn't talking to them more frequently. Okay, TPR Nation, this has been Jamie Shalansky. This is an episode of Worlds to Conquer, where we went through how we surge with new clients, setting expectations with them right from the get-go, building that financial house, and then also taking out the head trash of thinking that your team isn't talking to your new clients. Trust in your processes, trust in your system, and by golly, trust in your team.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial be a better husband, father, mother, and wife.